Lily worked at a small diner on the side of a quiet road. The place wasn't very big, with only a few booths by the windows and a counter with old, squeaky stools. It wasn't fancy, but it felt warm and safe. Most of the customers were regulars, truck drivers, old couples, and families passing through. Lily knew almost everyone who came in. One evening, just as the sun was starting to go down, Lily noticed a boy sitting alone in the corner booth by the window. He looked about 12 or 13, small and thin, with messy dark hair that fell into his eyes. His clothes were old and a little too big for him. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring outside like he was waiting for something. Lily went over with a smile and asked, "Hey there, what can I get you?" The boy didn't answer. He just pointed to the water jug on the table. His voice was so soft when he finally spoke, it was almost a whisper. "Just water, please." She filled his glass and left him alone, thinking maybe he was shy. The diner got busy for a while, and when Lily looked back, the boy was still there, his glass of water barely touched. He didn't order any food. He didn't even look at the menu. As the night went on and the customers slowly left, the boy stayed in the same spot. Lily felt a little worried. She wondered where his parents were or if someone was coming to pick him up. But he just sat there quietly, watching the cars pass by on the road. Before closing time, Lily walked over again and asked gently, "Are you sure you don't want anything to eat, sweetheart? The kitchen's about to close." The boy shook his head without looking at her. But Lily saw the way his eyes followed a plate of food as it passed by. She could tell he was hungry. When the last customer left and her shift was almost over, Lily made a decision. She went to the kitchen and fixed up a small plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Nothing fancy, but warm and filling. She placed it in front of him with a kind smile. "Here, on the house, we made too much," she lied. The boy stared at the plate for a moment, then looked up at her. There was a tiny spark in his tired eyes, like he couldn't believe it. He nodded once and picked up his fork, eating quickly but neatly, not wasting a single bite. Lily didn't ask any more questions. She just let him eat. After he was done, he slid out of the booth, gave her a small, quiet nod, and left without another word. That night, as Lily cleaned the tables and turned off the lights, she couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Something about him stayed with her. The sadness in his eyes, the way he hadn't asked for anything but needed so much. She didn't know his name, where he came from, or why he was alone, but she told herself if he came back, she'd make sure he didn't go hungry again. And from that night on, Lily always kept an extra plate ready, just in case. The next evening, just as the sun was setting and the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, the boy came back. Lily saw him walk in quietly, his head down, his hands in his pockets. He went straight to the same booth by the window, like nothing had changed. Lily's heart felt a little lighter when she saw him. She gave him a small wave, and though he didn't wave back, she noticed a tiny nod. It was enough. This time, he didn't even ask for water. He just sat there, looking out the window again. Lily knew he wouldn't order anything, so she went to the kitchen and made a simple plate of food, grilled cheese and a small bowl of soup. She placed it in front of him like before and smiled. "Looks like the kitchen made too much again," she said softly. The boy looked at the plate, then at her. His eyes were still sad, but a little less empty than before. Without a word, he picked up the sandwich and started eating. Lily pretended to clean tables nearby, giving him space. She noticed how carefully he ate, making sure not to leave a single crumb. After he finished, he quietly stood up, gave her a small nod again and left. No words, no questions. This became their little secret. Every evening, the boy would come in, and every evening, Lily would prepare a small plate of food for him. Sometimes it was scrambled eggs, other times a sandwich or a bowl of soup. Nothing fancy, but warm and filling. Lily never told anyone, not the other waitresses, not the cook, not even her boss. She paid for the meals herself when she could, and when money was tight, she would tell the kitchen it was extra or leftover. She didn't need to know his story. It didn't matter why he came or where he went after. What mattered was that he ate. They never talked much. Sometimes she would ask how his day was, and he would answer with a quiet "okay" or just a nod. Other times, they would just sit in silence, with Lily wiping down tables while the boy ate in peace. There was something about those quiet moments that made Lily's heart ache. It wasn't just about the food. It was about kindness, about seeing someone when no one else did. The boy became part of the diner's evening rhythm. People came and went, but he was always there, sitting by the window, a little shadow of a person that most people didn't even notice. But Lily noticed. And every night, she made sure that lonely boy had a warm meal to fill his stomach, even if the world outside had nothing else to give him. Days turned into weeks, and the boy kept coming back. Every evening, just before sunset, he would quietly open the diner door, walk to the same booth by the window, and sit down without a word. Lily always noticed him right away. No matter how busy the place was, she made sure he wasn't forgotten. By now, it had become a habit. Lily would bring him a plate of food without him asking. Some nights it was pancakes, other nights it was soup, or a sandwich with fries. He ate it all, always with care, always quietly. One evening, as Lily set down a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of him, she decided to try again. She sat down at the booth across from him for a minute, resting her arms on the table. "What's your name, kid?" she asked gently, giving him a small smile. The boy hesitated, keeping his eyes on the plate. Then, in a voice so soft she could barely hear it, he said, "Sam." Lily smiled. "Nice to meet you, Sam. I'm Lily." Sam gave a tiny nod, but didn't say anything else. It wasn't much, but it was a start. After that night, Lily tried to talk to him a little more each time. She never asked too many questions. She knew he wasn't ready for that. But sometimes she would tell him about the weather or a funny customer or how the jukebox broke again. Sam started answering in short, quiet words. When she asked how his day was, he'd say fine or okay. When she joked about how the cook burned another batch of fries, he gave a tiny smile. It was the first time she had seen even a hint of happiness on his face. She noticed small things about him, too. How he always sat facing the window, how he flinched a little when the door slammed, and how his eyes always followed the cars on the road. It made her wonder where he went after he left the diner, but she didn't ask. She figured he would tell her when he was ready. Every evening, it was the same. A warm plate of food, a few quiet words, and then he would leave. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. Those small conversations meant more to Lily than she could explain. It felt good to know he trusted her, even if it was just a little, and every time he spoke, no matter how softly, she felt like she was slowly pulling him out of whatever dark place he was in. She didn't know where the road would take him, but for now, he had a place at that little booth by the window, and someone who cared. After a while, Sam became a part of the diner's quiet routine. Every evening, just like clockwork, he would walk through the door, head down, and slide into the same booth by the window. The bell above the door would ring softly, and Lily would look up from whatever she was doing. She always gave him a small smile, and he always gave a tiny nod in return. Lily had started to guess what kind of food Sam liked. He seemed to enjoy pancakes, scrambled eggs, and grilled cheese the most, so she often made sure one of those was ready for him. When he sat down, she would place the plate in front of him without saying much, and he would eat quietly, never leaving a single crumb behind. The other people in the diner barely noticed him. They were too busy talking, eating, and going about their own lives. To them, Sam was just a quiet kid sitting in the corner. But to Lily, he was something more, a reminder that even in a busy world, there were people who could be easily forgotten. Sometimes on slower nights, Lily would sit across from him for a few minutes. She told him simple stories about the diner, like how old Joe, the cook, once burned a whole tray of toast because he fell asleep standing up, or how the jukebox sometimes played the same song twice in a row, driving everyone crazy. Sam didn't laugh out loud, but Lily noticed the corners of his mouth twitching up just a little. She counted that as a win. The days felt peaceful in their own way. Outside, cars and trucks rumbled down the road, and inside, the hum of quiet conversation and the clatter of dishes filled the air. But in that little booth by the window, there was a calm, silent world that belonged to just Lily and Sam. As time passed, Lily stopped wondering too much about where Sam went after he left the diner. She knew he had his reasons for keeping quiet, and she didn't want to scare him away by asking too many questions. She was just glad he kept coming back. Sometimes she would catch him watching the families in the diner, a dad helping his little girl cut her pancakes, or a group of teenagers laughing over milkshakes. There was a look in his eyes then, something between sadness and longing. It made Lily's heart ache, but she didn't say anything. She just made sure his plate was always full and his seat was always waiting. For Lily, this quiet routine wasn't a bother. It was a small, simple act of kindness, and it mattered. Even if no one else saw it, even if no one else cared, she did. And for Sam, it was a reason to come back. One rainy evening, everything felt the same at the little diner. The sky was dark and heavy, and the sound of raindrops tapping against the windows filled the room. Lily was behind the counter, pouring coffee for a couple of regulars, when she looked toward the door. The bell above the door didn't ring. Sam wasn't there. She waited, wiping down the tables, glancing at the window every few minutes. Usually, by this time, he would have already taken his seat in the corner booth. His plate would have been ready, warm, and waiting. But the seat stayed empty. At first, Lily told herself maybe he was late. Maybe the rain had slowed him down. But as the hours passed, and the diner began to empty, her stomach tightened with worry. She kept looking out at the road, hoping to see a small figure walking in with wet hair and a shy nod. But he never came. By closing time, the booth by the window was still empty. Lily stood there staring at it, feeling a strange ache in her chest. She didn't know why it hit her so hard. Sam wasn't family. He wasn't a regular customer who chatted and laughed. He was just a quiet boy with sad eyes and a small appetite. But somehow, he had become important to her. She cleared the untouched plate of pancakes she'd made for him and sighed. Maybe tomorrow, she whispered to herself. The next evening she hoped again, but Sam didn't show. Days passed, and each evening felt a little colder, a little lonelier. The booth stayed empty, and the extra plate Lily made went untouched. The other customers noticed nothing. The world outside the diner kept moving, but for Lily, something was missing. She found herself thinking about him during the day, wondering if he was okay, if he was safe, if he had somewhere dry and warm to sleep. She didn't even know where he lived, or if anyone was looking for him. One night, after closing, Lily sat alone in the diner with a cup of cold coffee in her hands. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt heavy. She stared out the window at the empty road and said softly, "I hope you're all right, Sam." She wished she could do more, but all she could do was wait. And so she did. Each evening, she left the booth open for him. She kept an extra plate ready, just in case. And though the days turned into weeks, a small part of her still believed he might come back, walk through that door, and give her that tiny nod like he always did. Because sometimes, the people we barely know leave the biggest space when they're gone. One foggy morning, Lily arrived at the diner early. The air outside was cool and heavy, and a soft mist clung to the windows. She unlocked the door, turned on the lights, and started her usual routine, wiping tables, setting out napkins, and brewing the first pot of coffee. It felt like any other morning, quiet, calm, and still, but something in the air felt different, though Lily couldn't explain it. About an hour later, just as the diner was starting to wake up, Lily heard the sound of engines outside. Not just one, but several. She glanced out the window and froze. 4 large black SUVs pulled into the gravel parking lot. They were shiny and spotless, standing out against the old buildings and dusty road. She had never seen cars like that in their small town. The diner rarely got visitors from outside, and definitely not the kind who drove cars like those. The doors of the SUVs opened, and men in dark suits stepped out. They looked serious, their eyes scanning the area like they were searching for something or someone. Lily felt a little nervous. She wasn't sure what was happening, but it didn't seem like a normal breakfast stop. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter as she watched them move toward the door. The bell above the door rang as one of the men held it open. And then from behind them, a boy stepped out of one of the SUVs. Lily's breath caught in her throat. It was Sam. But he didn't look like the same quiet, messy-haired boy she remembered. His hair was neatly brushed, and he wore clean, expensive-looking clothes. He still looked small, still had those same tired eyes, but there was something different about him now. Something careful, something protected. Sam walked into the diner, his face softening when he saw Lily standing there. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped, like everything was quiet again. Lily stepped forward, surprised and relieved all at once. "Sam," she said, her voice almost a whisper. He gave her that same small nod she'd seen so many times before. The men in suits stood by the door, watching, but not speaking. Lily looked at them, then back at Sam, confused but glad to see him safe. Sam took a slow step closer and said softly, "I came to say thank you." Lily felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to ask where he had been, who these people were, what had happened. But in that moment, none of it seemed to matter. He was there. He was all right. And that was enough. Lily's heart was still racing as she looked at Sam standing there. The diner, usually filled with the sound of clinking plates and soft music, felt silent. The men in suits stayed near the door, quiet and serious, but they didn't seem angry. They were just waiting. Sam took another step closer. He glanced around, like he was remembering the old nights when he used to sit by the window, eating the warm meals Lily made for him. There was a softness in his eyes now, but also something older, something heavier. "I'm sorry I disappeared," Sam said quietly. His voice was stronger than before, though it still held that gentle tone Lily remembered. Lily shook her head, a smile pulling at her lips. "You don't have to be sorry, sweetheart. I worried about you." Sam looked down at his hands for a moment, then back up at her. "I wasn't supposed to be here before. I ran away." He took a breath. "My family, they were looking for me." Lily's eyes widened a little. She hadn't asked questions before, but now the puzzle pieces were starting to fit together. "Your family?" she asked softly. Sam gave a small nod. "My dad? He's kinda important. Those men are from his office. They've been looking for me for weeks." Lily's mind raced. She looked over at the men in suits. No wonder they looked so serious. No wonder Sam had been alone, hiding, coming in only when it got dark. Sam gave her a small, sad smile. "I was just tired of everything, of being watched all the time, of being told what to do. I just wanted to be a normal kid for a while." Lily's heart ached for him. She stepped closer and reached out, gently brushing a hand against his shoulder. "You don't owe me any of this, Sam. I'm just glad you're safe." He nodded, his eyes shining now. "You were the only one who was kind to me. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't chase me away. You fed me. You made me feel like I mattered." Those simple words made Lily's eyes sting. She gave the shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Of course you matter, Sam. You always did." There was a long, quiet pause between them. The men by the door didn't rush him. They just waited. Sam smiled, a real small smile this time. "I wanted to come back and say thank you for everything." Lily smiled back, tears in her eyes. "You're welcome, sweetheart. You'll always have a place here, okay? Anytime." Sam gave her one last nod, then slowly turned and walked back toward the men in suits. They opened the door for him, and just before stepping outside, Sam looked back one more time, his eyes meeting Lily's. Then he was gone. After Sam left, the diner felt different. It was still the same little place with the worn red boots and the old jukebox in the corner. The same regular customers came in, ordering their coffee and pancakes, talking about the weather and small-town news. But for Lily, something had changed. Every evening, she still looked at the booth by the window. The seat stayed empty, but in her heart, she could almost see him sitting there, head down, hands in his pockets, quietly waiting for his plate of warm food. Some nights, she made an extra plate anyway. Scrambled eggs, grilled cheese, or pancakes, the kind Sam liked. She placed it on the counter for a while, before giving it to one of the regulars who came in hungry. It made her feel like a small part of him was still there. Though Sam was gone, the memory of him stayed with her. She thought about his quiet way of saying thank you, the tiny smiles, and the way his eyes watched the world outside the window. She remembered how lonely he seemed, and how those small, quiet moments in the diner had made a difference for both of them. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at the diner. It was plain, with no return address. Lily opened it carefully. Inside was a simple, handwritten note. Thank you, Lily. I'm doing okay now. You were my safe place. I'll never forget you. Sam. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she read those words. She smiled and folded the note, tucking it safely into her apron pocket. It was the kind of thing she would keep forever. From then on, Lily made it her mission to look out for anyone who looked lost or lonely. A tired traveler, a shy kid, or someone who just needed a little kindness. She made sure no one felt invisible in her diner. People noticed how warm and welcoming the place felt. It wasn't just the food. It was the way Lily treated everyone like they mattered. And though no one else knew about Sam, Lily carried his memory in her heart like a quiet promise. The little booth by the window stayed part of the diner's story, and even though Sam wasn't there anymore, Lily still glanced at it with a soft smile, remembering the boy who had once made it his hiding place. Life in the small town went on, with busy mornings, rainy afternoons, and peaceful nights. But for Lily, those days she spent quietly feeding a lonely boy had changed her forever. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness leave the deepest marks. And in the corner of that little diner, Sam's story would always be a part of hers.